Who is this man? What did he do for the Mafia Commission to receive such a huge reward? He's the person he's waiting for in this clip. Let's find out all about it in today's episode of Fake or Fact. This was a regular day at a luxury hotel in Manhattan when a well-dressed man entered and asked to speak to the manager. The man requested to see the surveillance footage from one of the rooms, but the manager politely declined, saying that they didn't keep footage longer than 24 hours. As the man walked away, the manager noticed something strange. It was him. It was Carmine Galante, one of the biggest mobsters in the Mafia Commission. Carmine had been involved in several high-profile cases, including being the suspect in the Lufthansa heist, one of the largest cash robberies in history. But what was he doing here, and why did he need the footage? Carmine was indeed up to no good. Was looking for his traitorous partner, Gregory Scarpa. They had worked together on several occasions, but this time they were supposed to steal items from a collector worth $50 million. However, Scarpa had betrayed him and sold the information to the FBI. It's an action that could cost Carmine and the Mafia Commission dearly. Well, Carmine had no choice but to eliminate the threat. But how could he be sure that Scarpa wouldn't double-cross him? That's why he needed to check the footage. It would reveal whether Scarpa was truly alone in the room with the collector's items. But there was a problem. Would Carmine actually find this footage? Before we find out, let's take a look at how Carmine got to this point in his life. Joseph Bonanno was born in 1905 in the small town of Castellammare del Golfo in Sicily, Italy. His father owned a bakery and was a local mafioso, which meant that young Bonanno grew up surrounded by criminal activity. At age 18, Bonanno immigrated to the U.S. and joined his father's organization. He soon made a name for himself as a ruthless killer and eventually became one of the most feared mobsters in the country. In the 1930s, Bonanno formed an alliance with two other crime families, the Lucchese and the Genovese, and together they became known as the Mafia Commission. The Commission was a powerful group that controlled organized crime in the United States, and they made millions of dollars through illegal activities like gambling, extortion, and drug trafficking. However, not everyone was happy with the way things were going in the Mafia Commission. In the early 1960s, a new family, the Gambino crime family, began to emerge as a major player in the organization. This new family was led by a man named Carlo Gambino, and they quickly became more powerful than the other three families combined. The situation came to a head in 1964, when Bonanno attempted to launch a war against the Gambinos. He was convinced that the only way to restore order to the commission was to take out the Gambino boss. Unfortunately for Bonanno, the other two families refused to join him in his war and instead chose to remain neutral. As a result, Bonanno was forced to flee to Italy, and he remained there until 1969, when he returned to the United States and resumed his position in the commission. Despite his efforts to regain power, Bonanno was never able to fully recover from the embarrassment of his failed war. He spent his remaining days in the Mafia Commission trying to rebuild his reputation and regain the respect of his peers. In the 1970s, Bonanno found himself in trouble again after the FBI linked him to the Lufthansa heist. The heist had been planned and executed by a group of thieves led by Martin Krugman, a former police officer and thief. They had stolen $5 million in cash and $800,000 in jewelry from a Lufthansa cargo plane at JFK International Airport. The Lufthansa heist was the largest cash robbery in history, and it made Bonanno and the Mafia Commission a lot of money. However, the FBI was determined to catch those responsible, and they soon began to close in on Bonanno. To make matters worse, one of the men involved in the heist, a hitman named Jimmy Burke, was killed in a mob hit before he could testify against Bonanno. This left Bonanno as the prime suspect in the case, and he knew that he had to act fast to clear his name. He decided to work with the FBI and provide them with information on other mobsters in exchange for immunity from prosecution. This included information on Joseph Colombo, a powerful mobster who had been involved in several murders. Bonanno also provided the FBI with information on several other mobsters, including Anthony Fat Tony Salerno, Anthony Dukes Rousseau, and Paul Vario. This information led to the arrest, to conviction of several mobsters, and helped to dismantle some of the most powerful crime families in the United States. In return for his help, the FBI granted Bonanno immunity, and he was never charged in connection with the Lufthansa heist. Despite his success in clearing his name, Bonanno's relationship with the FBI was always strained, and he continued to be investigated for his involvement in other crimes. In the early 1980s, Bonanno became the target of a new investigation into the drug trade in the United States. The FBI was working with the Colombian authorities to track down the source of the drugs, and they soon learned that Bonanno was one of the major buyers. This led to a new crackdown on the Mafia Commission, and several of Bonanno's associates were arrested. In response, Bonanno fled to Italy, where he remained until 1986, when he returned to the United States and surrendered to the FBI. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, but was released early in 1992. After his release, Bonanno lived a quiet life away from the Mafia. He spent his time playing golf and fishing, and he avoided any involvement in organized crime. However, despite his best efforts, Bonanno's past would eventually catch up with him. In 2002, Bonanno was indicted on racketeering charges, and he was sentenced to 4 years in prison. He served 3 years of his sentence before being released on medical grounds. He died of natural causes in 2002. Now let's get back to our story. Carmine had just watched the footage. Fortunately, it wasn't what he was hoping for. Gregory Scarpa had brought someone with him to the room, someone who turned out to be an undercover FBI agent. Carmine had unknowingly walked into a trap, and now he was in danger. He had to get out of the hotel as fast as possible before the FBI closed in on him. But as he turned to leave, he saw another set of men entering the room where Scarpa had been staying. These men were members of the Gambino crime family, and they had come to collect on Scarpa's debt. Carmine knew that if the Gambinos found out that he had been there, they would kill him. So he turned and ran for the door. As he made his way through the crowded hotel lobby, Carmine could hear the shouts of the Gambino thugs behind him, were closing in on him, and he knew that he wouldn't be able to hide forever. Suddenly, he spotted an exit door, and he dashed toward it. He flung it open and slipped out into the bustling New York City streets. Carmine had escaped the Gambinos, but he knew that he couldn't stay in the city. He needed to get out while he still had the chance. He hailed a cab and gave the driver an address in the Bronx. As the cab pulled away from the hotel, Carmine let out a sigh of relief. He had made it out alive, but he knew that this was only the beginning of his troubles. The Gambinos would be looking for him, and he couldn't stay in New York if they wanted him dead. He had to go on the run, and he had no idea where he would go or how long he could stay ahead of his pursuers. Carmine knew that he was in danger, but he was also determined to make sure that the FBI didn't win. He had been a mobster for most of his life, and he wasn't going down without a fight. As the cab sped through the city's streets, Carmine's mind raced. He thought about all of the things that he had done during his time in the Mafia, and he knew that he couldn't just give up now. He had to keep moving, even if it meant leaving the life he had once known behind forever. With that thought in mind, Carmine made up his mind. He was going to run, and he wasn't going to stop until he was safe. So the next time you watch a mob movie, remember that there is a real reason why mobsters are so ruthless. They are trained to be killers from a very young age. They live by a strict code of silence and loyalty, and they will do whatever it takes to protect their own. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe for more.